Before the video starts, I want to say one thing, and that is that Trials in itself is much easier in a group. If you have a hard time killing it solo, find a group, and it's much easier that way because of how it scales. And for anyone seeking help finding a group, there is an official Discord for Dauntless. That's at discord.gg/dauntless. That is a really good option to find players because it's the official Discord, and it's got a couple players in there, so it's a pretty good option, and hope it helps. What's up guys, Doe here, and today I'm discussing the new trial which features the Deadeye Coolshot Behemoth. And I want to start off by saying that this is going to be a really easy trial, especially on normal mode. In Dawn's difficulty it can be a little sketch, but this video will be centered upon the normal mode and approaching that effectively. I will have some tips for the Dawn's mode later on, but the normal mode is going to be my main center just because I think that's the most accessible mode or the most accessible difficulty for most players. So the reason I think this week will be the easiest is just because you're fighting Deadeye Coolshot, which isn't a very tough behemoth, and it's actually really easy because the Deadeye Coolshot normally has something called Aether Shrapnel. This is whenever its quills have explosive damage and they have an AoE. That's not the most fun thing in the world. That is by far one of my least favorite modifications to a behemoth in the game. But in the Trials mode, this is nowhere to be found, which I think is a amazing thing to happen for this trial, because if it had shrapnel, I would just skip it, man. Like, I don't like the shrapnel, it's not one of my favorite mechanics, but this trial does not have that. Instead, you just have Coolshot, and it has quills that they behave the exact same way, but there is no AoE, which makes it a pretty accessible behemoth fight to encounter, especially on the normal difficulty, which, by the way, to go over the mods, on normal difficulty, you will be encountering two different mods. The first will be Whiteout, and this is where an icy gale wind blows, whipping up blizzards on the battlefield that obscure visibility, destroy the ice globes to end the blizzards. I call them ice totems, call them what you want, but they're basically these obstacles that are created, and once they are on the battlefield, they create a blizzard for you. And let me say this one thing. If you do not handle them, your screen will get wider than white on rice on paper plate in a snowstorm, and it gets ridiculous. So I suggest breaking them, but you can, however, just ignore them, especially on normal mode, because there isn't any outside factors that will affect you, and all you have to do is focus on what Coolshot's doing, and you'll be fine. Now the next mod will be Frigid Touch. This is where behemoth physical attacks apply chilled to slayers. And now chilled, from what I understand, is just where you are slowed down, and I think it slows your attack speed and it slows your movement speed. This modifier can be completely avoided as long as you don't get hit, or if you bring +6 warmth. I'm pretty sure that cell will actually prevent being frozen or chilled, and if it's a big deal, if it bothers you a lot, you can actually bring that and you'll be fine. So overall, the modifiers for a normal version of Trials this week are much more generous than the last week, which had Trimmers, and that was not a great time. But the modifiers this week are actually much more nice, and they just make it a lot easier to get your marks and to actually have more fun playing it, because it's not as brutal. But the modifiers for Dawn's difficulty are a little rough. They're not as bad as they've been before or as brutal, but they are still a pain. So you're going to have Icy Grasp, and this was on the first trial week. This is where behemoths have been touched by frost energy and will periodically cause icy spikes to erupt. These icy spikes one-shot you, so don't get hit is my best advice. And you can actually avoid them if you want to by just running Molten or Swift or Fleet-footed. Just having a movement speed will help you avoid them really easily. Now, the next modifier is Deep Freeze, and this is where all frost damage is increased. This is kind of why Icy Grasp one-shots you, is because the damage is increased. And on top of that fact, you also have to deal with less stamina, because this modifier will also make it so player stamina costs are increased. Now, this will make it to where you can only dodge up to 3 times in the Dawn's difficulty mode, which can be kind of rough. To offset this, what you can do is bring stamina tonics, slot in some agility, bring conditioning. You can bring things to help you out with this sort of modifier, but my personal opinion on this is I don't really like the fact that it makes stamina cost more. That's kind of a rough thing to happen. Now the nice part is that this modifier is only in the Dawn's difficulty, which is a good thing. Last week we had Trimmers in both the Dauntless and normal version of the trial, which I think was a bit messed up. But this week that's not the case, so you have the easier modifiers on the normal mode and the hard modifiers on the Dauntless mode, which is I think how it's supposed to go. And for everyone not really concerned with getting gilded marks from the Dauntless mode, all you really have to do for the normal mode is bring pretty much any weapon, and you can get sub 3 as long as you have potions. And then my weapon tier list is going to go like this. You're going to have the hammer, the axe, and I think repeaters, chain blades, sword, and warpike. That is my current tier list. It could change a little bit, but I think for sure in normal mode, hammer will be the king, and then the axe will be right behind it is what I'm thinking is going to happen. Now, for this fight, you can bring any kind of element you want to for your weapons, and that means Reza, Riftstalker, Boreas, Ambermane if you want to. It doesn't matter what element you bring. What matters more this time is more so the stat, unique equip, and then the cell slots on the weapon. That's the biggest part, because I think that every single weapon can get a sub 3 on normal mode, and it won't be that big a deal. Just make sure you bring potions as well, which, by the way, the potions I would suggest bringing are going to be pylons, and then Aether Drive tonics, as well as Frenzy tonics. Those are the things I suggest bringing if you want to get a faster time. You can, however, bring Assault tonics for more stagger damage to get more staggers if you're using, say, the hammer, the axe, those kind of weapons. That's completely fine. But I do suggest bringing Aether Drive tonics, Frenzy tonics, and then the Inspiring pylons for the extra damage. So that's what you can bring to kill Coolshot, but when it comes to actually fighting Behemoth, it's going to be a bit different because in the trial mode, Coolshot's going to have a lot higher thresholds for pretty much everything. Health, stagger, interrupt thresholds, all those will be increased by a decent amount. And on normal, it can be a bit tough to actually get boops, but it's not that bad. Just understand that it's not going to happen as easy as it would outside of trials. But this Behemoth is going to behave in pretty much the same way as it does outside trials, and that means it's going to have a ton of spike volleys. It's going to have a really fast charge attack, so be prepared for that, because that move is what can pretty much end a run if you're low at all, because depending on what you're wearing, it can actually one-shot you, especially if you're Berserker on. I'm pretty sure it's either a one-shot or close to a one-shot. Now for the other attacks, it's going to have some different variations between some swipe attacks and some body slides. So those can be either fast or slow. Just keep an eye on like what the tempo of the initial charge up is, and that'll tell you the tempo of the attack. So dodge accordingly. And I think the biggest move that's going to be a rough thing to be aware of is going to be the side spin. So Coolshot will turn on its side, and in doing so, it can actually hit you with that iframe of its face and its body. Like that can actually do a ton of damage to you if you're too close to it, or if you don't dodge it. But the hard part about this move is that when it's on its side, it can actually shoot quills at you, and in doing so, it'll move its body for each time it shoots quills. This won't be that bad on normal difficulty, but on Dauntless, which I'm going to go ahead and switch my focus to that, it'll be pretty rough, because what I like to do is focus on killing the ice totems whenever they're active during this mode. But the problem with that is that those quills can actually hit you from range, and it's kind of hard to see what it's doing from a distance whenever it's on its side like that. So that can be sort of a hard thing to deal with. But on Dauntless difficulty, you want to break the totems, because that is basically a smoke screen on you're in a blizzard basically. Like it's legit a blizzard, and it makes it hard to see things. Now watching Coolshot's moves aren't that hard, but keeping an eye on the icy grass below your feet, that is a pain to do when you don't have very good visibility, which the totems reduce visibility, making it a pretty big threat to deal with. And on certain weapons, it's kind of a pain to break the totems really quickly, so it's really scary focusing these totems down, because it's hard to see the ice below you, and it's hard to see the Coolshot whenever you're focusing on two things at once. But I think in the DOS mode, my tier list is going to be a bit different for the weapons, and it's going to go like this. I think Repeaters and then Chainblades will be the top dogs, and after that, I'm actually not too sure will be that good. I just know that Warpike will be last, and that's just how the weapon is. I'm not saying the weapon's bad, I'm just saying it doesn't do any damage. Alright, weapon's fun to play, but it does next to nothing for damage in trials. But the reason I'm choosing Chainblades and Repeaters as the top dogs for Dauntless trials is because they are much easier to avoid the hard mechanics such as Icy Grasp and other things. Repeaters can just like run fleet-footed and Molten and just avoid pretty much everything. You can just avoid the ice by rolling and walking, and you're fine. The Quills, you can just shoot your weapon and run in a circle if you want to. I've heard you can just DPS during this mode. I haven't really tried it that much yet, but that's also an option apparently. And the Chainblades have two really nice specials that are really quick to use to avoid attacks that would body you. So you have Reaper's Dance, and you also have Cruel Rift Strike. Now Reaper's Dance, I'm being told, is a good option. It's better than Rift Strike, but personally, I like Rift Strike more on this fight. The issue though, is that Rift Strike is kind of wonky sometimes. It'll keep you in frame longer than you want to be, and then other times you'll Rift Strike through the Behemoth and then die instantly. Because you'll be Rift Striking, and then for some reason, you'll have an Icy Grasp like Icicle spawn directly on top of you right when you land, or a Quill will hit you right when you land too. So it's kind of wonky how that works. I feel like it's kind of messed up that like you'll Rift Strike through the Behemoth and then you'll have something waiting for you to kill you. It's kind of mean, but that's the danger of using Quill Rift Strike. But anyway, these two weapons are really good options for doing this trial, and Repeaters are a really good option I feel, because I think that Coolshot's going to be hard to stagger, and it's going to be semi-difficult to interrupt, and when you do interrupt it, the interrupts don't last for that long. The stagger lasts for a decent amount of time, but the interrupt won't. And even still, weapons like the hammer and the axe, you pretty much want to stand still to a degree to get your damage in. Like, you won't be standing still exactly, but you'll be staying in one spot for a decent amount of time. And this is where Icy Grasp will sort of ruin your whole rotation. Now the repeaters, you don't have to do that, and on Chainblades you can just Q and then go back to DPSing really quickly. So repeaters and Chainblades are really good for repositioning, and that's why I'm placing them as two of the best weapons on this fight. But that is basically the end of this video, guys. If you liked it, be sure to leave a like, and if you want to, subscribe to the channel for Donald's content. And if you want to watch some live content on a stream, perhaps, I am a Twitch partner and a Donald's partner, so if you want to check me out on Twitch at twitch.tv/Odo. Also have my own partner flair for Dauntless, so if you want that, be a Twitch subscriber with Twitch Prime Tier 1 and Tier 3 sub, or get the sub. Whatever happens, hey, you fly that way, it's pretty cool. And the last thing is, I do have an Epic Games supporter creator code. That's going to be Odo. Use that on the Epic Games store or on the in-game Dauntless store, because that helps me out a ton. But thank you guys again for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
See you.